5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Welcome everyone to Coffee and Kabbalah. Thank you so much to today's shiur sponsor, Tova Domnich, for sponsoring the shiur in honor of her two gorgeous daughters, Rachel and Sarah's birthdays, who are both born on Tu B'Shvat, which is tonight. Parshas Beshalach is famously known for the main event of Parshas Beshalach, which is the splitting, Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea. This Shabbos is also known as Shabbos Shira. Shabbos Shira is the time that we commemorate the Shirat Hayam, the song that was sung by the men and the women. We learned that after this ocean split, for the Jewish people erupted in song and dance. The men were led in song by Moshe Rabbeinu, and the women were led in song by Miriam Hanaviah. And it says the women's song surpassed the men's because of their amunah, because they had been preparing. They had a better song because they were preparing. They knew that they're going to be redeemed. They were better at it. They prepared their dance moves, their instruments, their music. They knew they were inspired, and they would have been waiting for this moment for years. And the part of one of the customs of Shabbos Shira is to feed the birds. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that it says that the birds joined in the Shira when we were singing in the Shira. The birds joined in singing us and harmonizing. Another reason is very interesting, is because in this week's parsha, not only did we have the miracle of the splitting of the sea. We have another after the splitting of the sea. It's a very, very packed episode. Like if I would look at this as as a producer producing episodes, this would be like 5 episodes worth of material. There's so much going on. We leave Egypt. We finally, the climax when we left, and then suddenly Hashem takes us in a roundabout way. Suddenly we're faced with an ocean. There's this terrifying moment. The Jews start to yell and scream, and we have these divisions of the 4 different types of people and how we react, and showing us how we react to our own difficulties and challenges in life. Some people said, let us jump in the ocean, let us just surrender, give up. They wanted to commit suicide. They wanted to just give in to their trouble. Some people said, let us go back to Egypt. We were better off there. At least we were alive. That's surrendering. Someone surrendering to the problem, just saying, forget it, I can't fight it. Another group said, let us fight them. Let's wage war against them. That's when we want to battle the darkness, right? Let's fight these anti-Semites. Let's answer every one of them. And the other group said, let's dive into Hashem. You think, yeah, that's great. They're right. Let's dive into Hashem. But Moshe said to all of them, no, none of you are right. Hashem said straight up to Moshe, Moshe said to them, Hashem will fight for you, and you be quiet. And Hashem then Moshe says to Moshe the same thing. He says, why are you yelling at me? Why are you shouting at me to free them? I gave you instructions to travel to get the Torah. Just keep going. Why you just ignore all the noise around you? Ignore the crazy people. Ignore the anti-Semitism. Close your social media. Keep going to where your destination. Don't get distracted by all the noise around you, and keep going to what you need to do. Finally, then as we learn the Medrash as the Nachshon said, listen to God, go in, keep going. So Nachshon begins to travel. Hashem makes this miracle. Moshe sticks his stick over the ocean. The ocean's now, after this whole episode ends, they've been saved by Hashem. They cry out to Hashem that they're starving, and Hashem makes this great miracle of manna, which is hinted in that word is min Hashem, that their food comes from Hashem. And it's kind of like we learn that in Nisan, we're in this infantile stage of our relationship with Hashem. Nisan is the first of the months. It's our birth. It's our time of rebirth. When we learn about Nisan, we'll learn about how we're in this rebirth, how Aries is the first of the months. It's the most immature, but not in a mean way. Immature meaning childlike, underdeveloped, young, new, fresh birth stage. And in the stage of being reborn, usually the mom feeds the child. So here we're turning to Hashem, and Hashem literally takes care of us and feeding us just like an infant. We're literally being taken care of by Hashem in our birthing stages of emerging as a nation. As we're emerging, and what's really special about the man that fell every day. So what the man was white like food that fell at the doorsteps of every single Jewish people's homes every morning. There was dew underneath it to protect it from bugs, and dew on top of it to protect it from other bugs. And then they collected their man every day. What was unique about the man was that Hashem could have made it that they had leftovers for the next day, but Hashem made it that you had to eat all of your man, and if you left any over by the morning, it would be rotten. So you had to go to bed every single night, completely trusting that tomorrow Hashem will send you food. It's like imagining going to bed every night with an empty cupboard, not one piece of food in your house, nothing to eat, trusting and believing that tomorrow somehow you'll have food. It's the craziest thing. And this says that the man was bread of emunah and nourished their emunah. And that is how they developed their emunah, their trust in Hashem, because every morning Hashem showed them, I'm there for you again, right? And that's how children also develop that trust on their moms when they see that every time they cry, every time they need food, their mom is there for them. And that's what we learn to trust and hopefully have that trusting relationship with our parents. It's similar. Hashem said, every morning I'm going to be there for you. You don't have to leave any over, and I'm not letting you leave any over because I want you to see that all of your food comes from Hashem. And that was the birthing stages and the creating our our trust with Hashem, to see that Hashem is there for us. Then on Shabbos, something unique happened where Moshe said to Bnei Israel, and Hashem told Moshe, on Shabbos you can't collect. You can't bring things in from outside into Reshus HaRabim, into Reshus HaYachid. So therefore, you won't be able to get man. So on Friday, I'm going to give you a double portion of man. Here's where the second reason that we thank the birds is. And what happened was, Dasan and Abiram, the two troublemakers, the bad guys, the antagonists, they said, we want to show everyone that this is not godly man. This is just a fluke of nature. It's just some weird thing that grows in the desert. It's not godly. So what they did to try and convince everyone that is that they took of their own man, and they saved it from Friday because it would stay fresh till Shabbat, because Friday would stay fresh. And then on Shabbos morning, they put the man by everyone's doorposts in the morning to say, look, man is falling on Shabbos. It's an everyday occurrence. This is not God. And what happened was that the birds in the morning came and ate all of that man in order to not lead Bnei Israel astray, to think that it is godly. God said it's not going to fall on Shabbos. It doesn't fall on Shabbos. You're going to have double from Friday. And the message for us in our lives that I feel that we can take from this is that even though Hashem made it, that man didn't last forever, because ultimately he wants us to work for our food and he wants us to have that free choice. And with man, we have less of that. But to remember that even though it doesn't look that way, all food is manna. All food comes from Hashem. Every day, the truth is that the only reason we have any food to eat, the only reason we have anything to eat is because Hashem is giving us that bracha. It all comes straight from Shemaim. But it's not clear to us. There's so many barriers and there's so many steps between the food coming from heaven and then how it gets to our table, right? The food, the farmer that planted it, the person who harvested it, the store, that it doesn't feel like we're getting it from Hashem. And that challenge for us is to give us bechira, to be able to choose to think, am I thanking my own hard work for acquiring this food, even if I'm the one planting it? That's the challenge. Hashem said, you're going to go to Eretz Yisrael, you're going to be working for your food. Are you still going to know that the food is from me? Or are you going to think this is kochi v'otzim yadi asa li'esachayla, that it is my effort that made this food? And that's our challenge, to constantly look past all the mechitzot, all the barriers, and to say, who is this truly coming from? Is this truly from Hashem? Right. One of the few things that we saved was a mishmeret in the Mishkan was that jar of man to remind us, that reminder. This reminds me of recently, we had this beautiful moment where my husband and I got to go away for a night. My siblings watched the kids. And we woke up in the morning, and my husband and I were, obviously, you don't get to go on vacation and just not, you have to, like, every morning by carpool time, it's like great because my kids learn in Beitar to figure out how they're going to get to school. So my husband was on the phone for like half an hour calling tons of people to make sure he got there safely, because my son left his phone at home, and they took a public bus, and he had to drop off his brother at one place, at one school. My son is only 9 and a half. And he dropped off my 6-year-old at his school and then took another bus to his school, but he left his phone, so we couldn't hear if he got there safely. So we called every teacher, his friend who has a phone, everything to arrange to make sure he got there safely, taxis as a backup. And my son didn't know anything about it. He just got to school safely. Finally, his teacher texted us, yeah, he's here. Both of them are there, thank God. My husband said that's how it's like with Hashem, that he doesn't know. He doesn't even realize. My son doesn't realize that he doesn't know how much we're working for him behind the scenes. He thinks that he's on his own, that he's trying to figure this out. He's probably stressed out, like, how am I going to figure this out? We missed the bus, etc. And he doesn't know that behind the scenes, we're arranging everything for him. We're making sure we're there to catch him. And it was like this powerful moment of like, wow, Hashem is doing so much for us behind the scenes, and that we have no idea about. And it was such a powerful mashal. Think about it in your own lives. How many times you're arranging things and your children have no idea, and they think. But even that morning, my son made the lunches, and I asked my sister how it was in the morning, making lunches and everything. My sister, but she's like, Mendel made the lunches. I said, why? She's like, he thought that, and I asked him why. She's like, I thought that I was supposed to. No one else did it. And I was like, no, we arranged it. My sister, she knew, she had a list of exactly what to make. So sometimes we take on this burden on ourselves, and he was probably overwhelmed by it. Like, why are you putting so much on me? I'm only 9. I don't make lunches for me and my brother. And I was like, you don't have to do it tomorrow. Your aunt is doing it. So it's like sometimes we feel like, well, Hashem knows taking care of this for me, so I have this heavy burden. But if we just let go, Hashem will find a way to take care of it. It was like these clarity, these moments of the emunah, and I found that like the mashals of how we do things for our children was really helpful in internalizing that emunah. So the man was there to nourish our faith, to breed our faith, and to give us that nourishment of trust in Hashem. And now we get to do the hard work, which is trying to internalize that and see that even when it's harder, even when there's so many more steps removed. And we all know, especially now it's Tu B'Shvat, we're talking about the farming, that it doesn't, that the whether someone can plant and spend tons and be the best farmer in the world and could have nothing grow, because ultimately it is from Hashem, whether or not things grow. He's there to do his part, to have this bechira chavshis, to do his work because Hashem wants him to. And then there can be somebody who doesn't have a green thumb, who doesn't even know what he's doing, and then suddenly is so successful, so much produce. And with parnasa as well, there can be somebody who has all the right connections, went to business school, and just can't make ends meet. And there's somebody who just randomly gets a lot of parnasa and is successful from outside forces. Our hatzlacha is not commensurate with our efforts. Our tzlacha is from Hashem. what we're supposed to receive, Hashem takes care of that regardless of our efforts. Our efforts are a catalyst to make a vessel to receive that. But what we're going to receive is it doesn't have to even be connected or commensurate with our efforts. Obviously, we have to do our hishtadlus. That is, we have to do that part because there needs to be a vessel. Hashem created in a way that we have to create a vessel and we have to do our hishtadlus. But whether or not we're successful, that's divine. Whether or not we're successful, but still, obviously, we have to have a hishtadlus because if Hashem, it's like that story where some said, like a man said to daven to Hashem for a lottery ticket. Hashem said, well, you have to buy. To win a lottery, says, well, you have to buy a lottery ticket. You have to do your part. You have to make it possible for me to help you within nature. You have to make it possible to make a vessel. But at the end of the day, the trust of who's providing it is from Hashem. So that is the other part of the parsha. Now we're going to go back a little bit briefly and touch on the name of the parsha, Beshalach. What does Beshalach mean? He sent away. Exactly. So what is this? Where does this come into the parsha? We have in the beginning of the parsha, Vayhi Beshalach Paro Asam. This is in the first source in your source sheets. When Paro sent the Jewish people at the nation, V'lo Nacham Elokim Derech Eretz Plishtim Ki Karovhu. Hashem didn't let them go through the Plishtim because it was too close to Egypt, and he was afraid that if they go so close, they're going to regret and they're going to want to go back. Ki Amar Elokim Pen Yinachem Am Bir Osam Milchama V'Shem Mitzrayim. They're going to get a little bit scared by the threat of the Plishtim. They're going to say, let's go back to Mitzrayim. He took them on a roundabout way, a long way. They literally were trying to get from Mitzrayim to Sinai, and instead of going from here to here, they went from here all the way around so that they wouldn't be tempted to say like, oh, we're right here, let's just go right back, or whatever things will pull them away. And so the word Beshalach Parasam is very unusual. First of all, the content of the parsha, the core of the message, the main episode, the main drama in this week's parsha, the peak is the splitting of the sea. So we would think that if the name of the parsha eclipses or encapsulates the whole parsha, it should be something to do with Shira, Kriyas Yamsuf, splitting of the sea, miracles, Nisim, not Beshalach, when Paro sent. And who sent them out? It's not saying when Hashem took us out of Egypt. It's saying when Paro sent us out of Egypt. Who's the one who sent us out of Egypt? That's crazy. First of all, why does the pasuk say that? And why are we focusing on that as the theme of this week's parsha? So we want to get really deep into that. Why is it saying Beshalach Paro Samanah? Right? When Hashem took us out. And we learned in the next pasuk right after that, let me open up my sources, that there's another unusual thing that it says. But Yaseb Elokim, the next pasuk right after this says, Yaseb Elokim esam derech midbar Yamsuf. Instead of taking them straight through the Plishtim, he took them in a roundabout way through the midbar Yamsuf, which is literally near Eilat, right? The desert right near Eilat, not far from here. The Chamushim alu bnei Yisrael meretz Mitzrayim. Chamushim has two meanings. The main meaning of chamush, if you're Israeli, you might know, it means armed, right? Because anyone chamush is armed. And a bunch of the women sitting here are also chamushim, right? You're chamusha. Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, I'll be chamusha soon for 10 years. And the other meaning Rashi says is, why are they telling us that they were armed? But Rashi brings down chamushim means a fifth. Chamesh from the word chamesh. Why does it say chamushim? Because only 1/5 of them left Egypt. Only 1/5 of them left because the rest, the 4/5 didn't want to leave. We learned this in Makas Choshek, that 4/5 of them died. And even that 1/5, they didn't even want to leave. So what happened? Beshalach Paro, they didn't want to go, but Paro forced them out. He said, get out of my land. You're a pest, get out of here. So that's why it says Beshalach Paro, because really, Paro had to force them out. They didn't want to go. Not only that, only 1/5 went out. Why are we starting off the Parsha with this? To say something so negative about Am Yisrael, that they didn't want to leave Mitzrayim. But also, why didn't they want to leave Mitzrayim? What do you guys think? Why wouldn't they want to leave Mitzrayim? They're finally being saved from slavery. Stockholm syndrome, the unknown, and in our lives, we can learn from this is a message in this, that to not be shocked by this, because we see this, every single one of us in our lives has something negative that we are afraid to leave, that we could leave. We have the button, but we're afraid. It's difficult and it's terrifying. We get used to something that's holding us back. We get used to our Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is our limitations. I know so many people who stay in an abusive relationship, in a bad or a toxic relationship, because the fear of not being in a relationship is terrifying to them. They don't know anything else other than that. There's people who don't want to leave prison when they're released because that's all they know. That's all they know about. And the list goes on and on. Those are extreme examples, but in our own lives, there's leaving a bad job. There's getting out of a stuck situation that we have, reaching out for help, getting out of any health crisis. There's so many fears. For me, I always share the example of leaving COVID for when I just wanted lockdown to be forever, because I was terrified of having to socialize again. You guys think I'm social, but the expectations of meeting everyone's expectations that they needed of me, I really, really was like for myself, praying that like I'll have lockdown forever. I'm like, I never want to leave this. And it was and once it ended now, and I transitioned, the transition into what is familiar to unfamiliar is very, very scary, even if it's a terrible situation. So we learned from this, and it's a message to realize that, to look into our own lives and see where is an area in my life that I am holding on to, that I am stuck in, that I'm staying in because of the fear of the unknown. And that's one positive we can learn from this. But it gets way deeper. Why are we calling the whole Parsha on this idea that Paro had to send us out? And this takes us to really what the whole reason that we're in Mitzrayim is, to transform darkness into light. Where there is a Yerida L'Tzorach Aliyah, to go down into the darkness, to take the wealth, the materialism, and take that darkness, turn it into light, and then we can reach the higher level of the Aliyah that comes after that, which is receiving the Torah, etc., as we discussed in previous classes. Now, the highest pinnacle of the highest expression of turning darkness into light, we learn, is like Shlomo Melech says, Ra'isi Yisron Ha'or Min HaChoshech. Now, Shlomo Melech is a genius. Everyone knows that light's better than dark. Why do we need Shlomo Melech to tell us that there's a Yisron, which means an advantage of light, of Or Min HaChoshech? Like, and then he goes on. He says, like Sichlus Minha, which from foolishness, like the advantage of wisdom over foolishness. Obviously, why? Like, that's your chiddush. Where I see this, we learn from the deeper level that what's Shlomo Melech saying. I see that there's a yisron, an advantage to or that comes from the choshech, to or that specifically comes through choshech. When choshech itself turns into or, that's the advantage to just regular light. There's light, and then there's light that comes from being in a dark place. We discussed this at the Shiva Seminim, because tonight's Tu B'Shvat, when we were going through the Shiva Seminim in our soul, we learned that the Aleph is the capacity inside of us to find our greatest light in struggle. Because just like the olive, the Chachamim say that just like the olive, when it's squeezed, its potential of light, it's how power to burn and to be oil, to shine, comes out when it's squeezed. So too, Am Yisrael, when we're squeezed, our greatest power comes out, right? And when we're squeezed, when we're in a challenging spot, when we're in a dark spot, when we're in a place of darkness, we uncover inside of ourselves. We can squeeze out of ourselves powers and kochel and light inside of our soul and muna and resources that we didn't even know we had, unless you were in a challenging situation, that we were pressed to find that and to squeeze that out of us. And that's what the ultimate expression of turning darkness into light in Chassidut, especially, it's called this tapchach hashochel and ora. The ultimate expression is when darkness itself becomes light, and that is actualized the most when we see that who was the one to send us out of Egypt, that the darkest Paro, the source of evil, was the one, he was the one to send us out. That it could be that your darkest oppressor, the darkest moments in your life, that's going to be the catalyst for the greatest light, for you to be sending out, for the light that's going to come. So you, instead of running away from the dark, we can say, let me look in the darkness and see where in the darkness might be my greatest light, in the darkness itself. So Paro himself became that catalyst. And not only that, at the end of the Parsha, we learned all the Egyptians died in the water, but Paro was spared. Why did Paro was spared? Why was Paro spared? And the Parsha tell us Hashem spared Paro? No, it's okay. It's a beseda. It's harmony. Paro is spared to be able to continue to go around the world and tell everyone about the great miracles of Hashem. So it ended up being Paro, the one who didn't believe in Hashem, who spent the rest of his life talking about what happened to him. He was a public speaker, right? He was this person who went through darkness and became a public speaker and talked about his challenges. He was like, you know what happened to me? Paro was the one talking about the miracles of God for the rest of his life. When the darkness itself can attest to the light, that's the greatest love, attest to transformation, and that's when we get the holiest and purest light. And now we're in a time when we have tons of darkness in Am Yisrael, right? There's no lack of darkness anywhere we turn, anywhere you live. If you're in America, you have the darkness of the whole world, being scared of being a Jew. When in Israel, we have actual threats to our own lives and our children's lives and our neighbors' lives. And there's no lack of darkness. And a lot of times we have so many different ways we want to deal with the darkness. We have so many ideas. And here in the Parsha, Hashem says there's different ways. You want to just surrender and give up and say, forget it. We want to go back and just succumb to the darkness and just stay in Mitzrayim and just stay in a dark place. We want to fight it. Like, that's great. Fight the Egyptians. Fight the anti-Semites. Let's go into, obviously, fighting Hamas is important. And I'm saying when we encounter in our own lives, we want to answer the anti-Semites. We want to answer those people who are dark. We want to try and answer Hamas and prove them wrong, right? Fight them or work with them. There's no working with darkness. All we can do, the best thing we can do, and even davening to Hashem says, all you can do is keep going. Why was it wrong? The two people who wanted to go and drown, we learned the measures, who wanted to go and drown or go back to Mitzrayim. We get why they're wrong. The people who wanted to fight the Egyptians, that's great. We're fighting now. That's a good thing. Why were they wrong? Why were the people wanted to daven wrong? Because Hashem said, I already gave you instructions of what to do. So right now is not the time to fight and daven, because I already told you that you're going to get the Torah. You just have to keep going to get the Torah. And this is really my favorite Rashi of all time. If you've been to my shiur, you know, is the Rashi in the source in the second source, I mentioned this in the shir already, but Yomer Shalom Moshe, what do you mean travel? He says, why are you yelling at me? Tell them to keep traveling. What do you mean? There's an ocean. Where are they supposed to go? Behind them, travel where? So Rashi explains where. Really simple, he says. Look at source 3. They have nothing to do but travel because the ocean is not in their way. The Muna that they believed in me to take them out of Egypt, the Muna of their fathers, is enough of a merit for me to cross the sea. What I love about this is that when we have a mission, when Hashem already gives us a mission, when we know where we're supposed to go in life, when we have a direction, we're supposed to add light, we're supposed to do torments, we're supposed to keep doing chesed. When we have a mission, all the things around us are just there to pull us away from our mission. They're distractions. We just have to keep heading towards the mission. What's my mission in life? What's my goal? How am I here in the world to spread light and to banish darkness? Everything else is a side thing. Even the ocean that seems like an ocean in front of me, but I can't do that because there's anti-Semitism that's overwhelming, and I could never do this, and there's no point. And all the reasons don't really exist. They were there. Obviously, the ocean was there, but Hashem says, and here's why. So let's go back. So first of all, the Rashi is claiming that things won't stop you. If you go towards your goal, if you have a positive goal, Hashem said that you should go get the Torah, that you should go towards what the mission Hashem gave us in this world is, to be light unto the nations, to be a light for Am Yisrael, to be a light for our family, starting the light within ourselves. We have to think about ways we can add light. What about when there's an actual ocean in front of us? And Hashem says it's not in front of you, but it is. What does that mean? What does that mean it's not in front of you? If it is and it isn't, how are we supposed to travel? Who says Hashem is going to split it? What proof do we have? So Hashem says, go back to the very first Rashi in the Torah. So we had, Torah begins with the word Bereshis. Rashi says, why did the Torah begin with a Beis and not an Aleph? To tell us that the whole world was created for Beis, for two things. For Bnei Israel and for the Torah, which are really one thing. For the Bnei Israel to keep the Torah, which means that when Hashem designed the world and created the world, it says, how does Hashem make the world? Like an architect. He doesn't just make a random world and say, how can we elevate those things for Kedusha? It's the opposite. If I'm building a gan or a home or a shul, I'm going to think, what are my needs in this shul? And build it accordingly. Do I need a hall? Do I need a youth lounge? What are the needs of our shul? I'm talking about our Chabad, right? We're going to build the place accordingly for our needs. When Hashem built the world, he looked in the Torah. It says, bara Oma. Hashem looked in the Torah and said, what do we need in the world? Well, we have to keep kosher. Let me make animals that are kosher. We have to not eat treif. Let me make treif animals, right? We have to put them in zuzas in our door. Let me make wood. We have to every single mitzvah in the Torah. Hashem went through it. We have to wear tefillin. Let me make wool. Every mitzvah in the Torah Hashem created. Every avera, we can't do that. Well, I have to create them so you don't eat them, etc. So give us free choice. You have to not be slaved by the nations or like nations. Let me make other nations. Everything was designed from the Torah, and not only was it designed from the Torah, but everything in nature. It said Hashem made a condition with all of nature that you will have this nature. Right, water will flow. Wood will be stiff, wind will flow, help me out here. All the things that are natural in this world, the sun will rise in the morning, the moon will rise at night, the sun will set at night. All those things will be designed. However, you are only there to help Bnei Yisrael fulfill their mission of keeping the Torah, to connect to Hashem, to bring light to the world. If it comes a point where you are stopping them, you need to change your laws of nature. And that's the condition I'm creating you with. Do you agree or not? They're like, sure. Do I have a choice? No. That was the condition that God built into all of nature. So now we're connecting that, Rashi, that if the whole world was created with the intention of a base of Israel keeping the Torah, then now when the ocean is seemingly standing in front of you, it's not going to stop you because it already was programmed in its condition that if you need to receive the Torah, it has to split for you. And that is really translates into every one of our lives. When I was younger and ambitious, I loved this Rashi because I really felt like I can do anything. I want to build a center for soldiers in the old city. There's no physical land. Don't worry. There's no plot land. I'll find it. Money. Who cares? I have to go towards my goal and let Hashem spoil the rest of the world. And this obviously reminds me, if you've ever heard of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, that is like the central theme of his book is like when you have your dream or that the entire universe conspires to help you find it. You just have to focus on having a passion, having a dream. That's a positive thing. And the whole universe and nature will fold to help you achieve your goal and your dream if you have the Emunah. And what's the schus of that? It says the Emunah that you believed in me. If we keep having Emunah, this is what Hashem wants from me, everything else will fold. And I remember teaching this many, many, many years ago. I'm making myself sound so old. Like 10 years ago, when I was teaching in a online school to Chabad shluchos from around the world, and we learned the Sikha on this Rashi, and I asked them to ask their parents at times when they had to go towards a goal, and physically, naturally, there was no way for it to happen, and to tell them what happened and how it happened. And they came back to me, and I wasn't on shluchos then, so I didn't have my own stories yet. Now I have my own stories of times when naturally things seemed impossible, but Hashem just made nature fold. Things like money and time, and didn't this summer we had nowhere to run our camp. but we still kept signups. We were like, we have to have a camp. We have to inspire Jewish children. So we had enrollments. We had over 100 kids, and we had to get permits and buildings. And then we had a place, and then the school was like, oh, by the way, they're renovating, you can't use it. And we're like, no, you have to. Like, sorry, we're having a camp. You're going to have to give us a spot. And mamash, we kept like, should we stop enrollments? Of course not. You keep doing it, and don't worry, that's Hashem's problem. He'll figure it out. We keep calling, and obviously it worked out. And it's just one of.
Where was it?
In the end, it was in that school. They had to give it to us. So they moved aside their stuff. They paused renovations. It happens. But they were just like, yeah, it was like a week before. Like, yeah, by the way, you can't use the location. We're like, they have to find somewhere else in the Zeit. We're like, that won't work for us because we doubled registration this year, and that has 2 rooms, and we need 4 rooms or 5, 6 rooms at least. So Baruch Hashem, but like this is one of many, many examples. And in our lives, what we know is that we need to focus on when everything is distracting, we feel overwhelmed. Like, what am I supposed to do now with all this darkness around me? We just have to keep focusing on adding more light and let everything else fold away. Ignoring all the darkness, don't answer. Obviously, there's those of us who have to go and physically sacrifice their lives to go into actually fighting the enemy, because that's what Hashem wants from us, to protect our borders, to protect Am Yisrael, right? That's their light. That's their mission. Every one of us thinks about, how am I being called up to help Am Yisrael? Can I support those who are going through whatever they're going through? Can I support those who are supporting them, the wives of those people who are there? Can I just strengthen people through Torah? Can I strengthen people through my meals? Whatever it is I can do to add more light right now to Am Yisrael, to my own family, to my own immediate surroundings, that's what I need to focus on. And everything else is going to melt away. I mean, it obviously will be there, but that's not for me to focus on. Those I want them on a necklace, like I one day. Just words you want to live with. Now, if you go into the next source, we actually see the source for this, about the Tanai. So look at the next page where it says Pasuk Chav Zayin. It's source 4. Shemos Yudalid, Exodus 14. So if you open up to Exodus 14, we have a very interesting pasuk where it says, "Vayik Moshe es yado al hayam, vayeshev ha'am lifnos boker le'itano." This is after the sea splits. Moshe puts his hand over the water, and it turns back in the early mornings le'itano. What does le'itan mean? Anyone here know someone named Leitan? It means what else? It's strength. Yeah, it's normal state. I thought it means strength. I thought Leitan means strength or koach. Okay. Leitano. I thought Leitano meant strength. So it's
like when somebody's sick.
Yeah.
So
his homeostasis, his steadfastness. Interesting. Eitan is also the words of Tanya. So we say that Tanya is our like Eitan. In this pasuk, it says the water returned to its Eitano, and the Baal HaTurim, the Kitzur Baal HaTurim, and Shemos both have a commentary on this word Eitano. And they both say, if you look at source 5, Eitano, Otios Litna'av, Eitan and Tanai, right? Eitano Litna'av. What is a Tanai? Anyone here remember having a Tnaim at your wedding? A Tnaim? In America, in the Ashkenazim say that's Tnaim, that's Naim. You make a Tnaim. What are Tnaim at your wedding? The conditions. There are conditions, a list of conditions. You give me this, I give you this. Marriage is a business deal, right? Obviously, we're going to talk in a moment about what marriage truly is. But that's part of the conditional. It's the prenups, right? The conditions for our marriage. And so Tanai means a condition. Le'etano, so what does this have to do with anything? But let's read the Baal Turim. Le'etano osios litna'av shehitna hakadosh baruch hu imayam b'ma'aseh breshis sheivaka levnei Yisrael. This is what we just said. That Hashem, which previous condition is it returning to? To the condition that Hashem made with it in the creation of the world, that it will split for Am Yisrael. Hashem said, I'm creating you to flow with the condition that when you see Am Yisrael, you will split for them. Great. Then it continues. There's another medrash that says a similar thing. But Yomer Lakim Yikavu Hamayim. Moshe said to Hashem, what do you mean split the sea? He's like, what are you so afraid of? Hashem says to him, he said, what? You make a rule that water flows? What do you mean the ocean is just going to split for us? There is no ocean in front of us. What do you mean? Just go. But Yomer Lakim, he says, Yikavu Hamayim. I'm the one who said Yikavu from the word Mikvet, that all the water should gather together. I'm the one who decided that. I'm also the one who made that condition for him. The same way I made a condition for it and I told it to gather, I also made the condition that it's going to split. Like it says, the original condition that I made. Then Moshe understood Hashem and he said, okay, I got this problem. Now we're going to shift into talking about shidduchim, marriage, soulmates. Hayam Ra'a, we have this interesting verse in Tehillim in source 7. Tehillim Kuf Yudalid 114. Hayam Ra'a Vayanos. The ocean saw and it fled. Hayarden Yisav La'achar, and the Jordan ran backwards. What is this? What's David Melech talking about in Tehillim? What is this talking about? It says the ocean, the Yam Suf. We're talking about the specific the Red Sea. It saw something that made it Vayanos, that made it run away. What did it see that made it flee? If you look at Bereshis Rabbah, it says, but that the Vayam, if you skip all the way to the bottom, it says it saw the Atzmot of Yosef. What did the ocean see that made it flee? It saw the Atzmot of Yosef that the Bnei Israel were carrying, and then it fled. And it convinced it to split. Hayamra avayanos beschus vayazo bigdei yanas. What's the connection between Vayanas and Yosef? The Gemara also speaks about this, that the Chama make the connection that it says that in merit of the one that fled, the Yosef that fled, the ocean fled as well. When did Yosef flee? From Potiphar's wife. When she grabbed on his clothing and she was about to seduce him and he was about to give in, finally, he said, no one's going to know anything. I'm away from my family. No one's going to know. It's going to save me my life, my jail time, whatever she'll do to me. But still, at that last moment, he fled. He ran away from her. And in schus of Yosef that fled, the ocean said, I'll flee from Am Yisrael. So that's the connection. Now, we have a bunch of questions on that. First of all, the ocean, we already learned, had been conditioned by God to split. So it should have split regardless of seeing Yosef's bones. It shouldn't have had to see Yosef's bones to split. And if for some reason it didn't split, didn't listen to Hashem's conditions, what about specifically Yosef? What was it about Yosef, the fact that he fled, that made the ocean suddenly want to flee? Even though, we saw that he fled, but what about Yosef that made this ocean say, now I'm going to flee? So let's go a little bit deeper into it. There's this teaching of Rav Avram of Karlin, this big tzaddik who says this really deep example here. And going back a little bit, we're gonna focus now on the question of kasha. In the Gemara, it says there's this famous story in the Gemara told that you may have heard, that the Queen of Sheba came to Shlomo Melech one day and said that God created the world in 6 days. What has he been doing since then? And Shlomo Melech said he's mezaveg zivugim. He's creating zivugim. And she said that's what Hashem is doing. I could do that. And so what did she do? She got a whole bunch of maids and maidservants. She made them shidduch. She said, look, I made shidduchim. That's what God is doing. That's what he's busy with for the last few thousand years. And then he quotes, the Gemara quotes and says that he said to her, Amrle, what did he say to her? Amarla, she said, L'shal kali b'chol azavgan. In 1 hour, I can make them all shidduchim. You marry you. Great, go home. Amarla, im kalahu beinayich. If it's easy in your eyes, kashu lifnei kodesh baruch hu kriyas yamsuf. It's that hard to Hashem as difficult as splitting the sea. So that's where we get that verse on. We all know the end of the story. We may have known the end of the story, that what happened to the 1,000 servants that she made, that they came back the next day with a broken arm, bruised eye. They all had injuries. They all came back and said, give us the tonight. We want a divorce right now, right? Obviously, it's not that easy. So that's the story. So our question is, what is the similarity between shidduchim and kriyas yamsuf, between making zivugim, between uniting two soulmates together and making and splitting the sea? First of all, why is it so hard for Hashem to make zivugim? Hashem could create the entire world, but he can't get two people to marry each other. What's so difficult about that? And what's the similarity? Is it that one is hard and the other one is hard? So let's explore the depth of and understanding this idea of what was so hard about making the ocean split, that it had to see the bones of Yosef, will help us understand this connection between uniting two soulmates, between zivugim and splitting of the sea. So the Aaron Kalin's Kiddush was this, that when Hashem, in Ma'aseh Bereshit, a few thousand years earlier, spoke to the ocean and it said, I'm creating with the condition that you split for Bnei Israel. He says, okay, so show me who they are. So he shows them Am Yisrael. And he says, wow, those souls are incredible. I'll split for those souls at any time. Of course, those are the most powerful, holy souls. Those are beautiful. When they come to me, I will split. Fast forward a few thousand years later, Bnei Israel is standing there, and the ocean's not splitting. And Hashem tells the ocean, time for you to split. And the ocean is saying, for who? He's like, for Bnei Israel that I showed you. He's like, where? I don't see them. He's like, you don't see the 6 million Jews. Those people? That's not the souls you showed me. You showed me beautiful, pristine souls. Now we're fast forward a few thousand years later. These Jews are at the lowest depths. They've been through slavery. They've been through the most challenging things in life. They're at their lowest, naked and afraid. They're naked of mitzvot, it says. They have no merits. These are depraved souls who are affected by 210 years of slavery. Then they had to be forced out of Egypt. And these are the people you want to slave for. This is not the souls you showed me. They have nothing to do with each other. You told me holy souls, and these are a bunch of bums, right? I'm not splitting for these people, right? Show me the souls. I'll split for them, no problem. So the sea was stubborn and said, nope, not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. So what happened? They're standing there, they're crying out, they're freaking out, and there's a problem here. And so then suddenly the ocean sees the bones of Yosef. What happens at that moment that made it change his mind and then flee back to doing what God said? At that moment, the bones of Yosef reminded the ocean something very deep. Yosef, it says the pasuk that when Yosef's brothers came to see him, it says, I brought the words down. Anyone But Yakir Yosef es Echav in Bereshis Membeis, Perak Membeis, Yosef recognized his brothers, Vehem lo hikiru, and they didn't recognize him. Well, why do you think they didn't recognize him?
Just like Egypt.
He looked different. He was dressed up like an Egyptian, and they looked like shepherds. They looked the same. He looked different. It's been not because of the distance of the years, because then he wouldn't have recognized them either. So it wasn't the years. It was that they couldn't, and on a deeper level, we learned that they couldn't recognize that Yosef, this even after he revealed himself to them and said, I'm Yosef, your brother, the same tzaddik. They saw an Egyptian, a materialistic, worldly leader standing in front of them. They said, okay, so you're now Yosef the Egyptian. You're not Yosef the tzaddik, our brother that was committed to Torah mitzvos. But Vayanas tells us that it was this, even Yosef, when he was still, even though he was in Egypt, he was leading Potiphar's home. He still held on to his values deep down, although on the outside he may have looked completely entrenched in Egyptian values, and he was, and he left Egypt. He was able to have both. Deeper down, if you looked a little deeper, you would see that he was the same tzaddik, so much so that even when nobody was seeing, even when he was in Egypt, he refused to succumb to the temptations of the Ish's Potiphar. He stood strong in his values and his commitments in his soul. His soul was still the same Yosef tzaddik. He remained Yosef tzaddik throughout Egypt. The brothers can recognize that. For them to be a tzaddik, you have to be a shepherd. You have to be removed from the reality of the world. You have to look like a tzaddik to be a tzaddik. But Yosef was able to be that person that showed us that you can be on the outside depraved or affected by Egypt, but on the inside you still have that same pure soul. That soul never changed. Yosef tzaddik, not only Yosef's soul never changed, he actually maintained he was known for all of his years in Egypt as Ha'ivri, he referred to himself that I don't belong here. I come from Ever Yarden. Right, that was the schut that his bones got to be taken out. He maintained who he was, his connection to his source, his connection to his roots, no matter where he was. And so when the ocean saw this about Yosef, when the ocean looked at Yosef's bones and said, it reminded the ocean to look deeper. That people make the same mistake when looking at the ocean. When you look at the ocean, you might think all there is blue water and forget about the rich universe of creations of plant life and animal life that lives under the ocean in its depths. You might look at the ocean and say it's so shallow. There's just water. There's nothing to it. The ocean has layers and layers and layers of depth that it houses, like the iceberg, right? The layers that we only see that tip of the iceberg in the oceans. And he says, don't make the same mistake that people make when they look at you. And we learned that in Hasidus, we learned that the world, that everything that exists on the world also exists in the ocean. And this is to teach us that there's the revealed world, the Oma Diskalia, the revealed world that we could see everything. And then there's Oma Diskasi, everything is hidden in the worlds of the ocean. So there's a hidden world inside of our soul as well. There's the revealed parts of us, and then there's the ocean of wealth inside of every single person. And the ocean was then reminded, let me look deeper at these people that are standing right here. Maybe if I look deeper, and suddenly the ocean looked deeper. He also reminded him to look beyond the shallow externalities of these slaves that just left Egypt. And when he looked deeper, he saw those same souls, that he was this exact same souls that Hashem showed him. And he said, wow, underneath that externality of those slaves that were embittered and tortured, those tortured bodies, is this pristine, beautiful soul that clung to the faith of Hashem, that clings to Hashem with emunah, even after they've been through years and years of slavery. These souls are even more beautiful than the ones I saw to begin with, because that soul wasn't challenged by life. And these souls are still retaining their pristineness despite the darkness that they've had to face in this world. And when the soul ocean saw that, it fled and it split as fast as it can. And the metaphor for and this is exactly the same reason why shidduchim is so hard. And here's why. Making shidduchim shouldn't be that hard, because Hashem made a similar condition with every soul, like it made with the ocean. 40 days, it says in the Gemara, that before the soul is born, 40 days, God matches up our souls. Hashem takes a soul, and he says, who wants to marry the soul? And all the souls that want to marry it come forth. Their shidduchim process, they all come forth, and Hashem chooses the perfect one for that soul to spend its life with, or part of its life with, to fulfilling their perfection and finding their sparks together. Great. Then Hashem says, I'm going to split you. You're going to be in the world. And in 20, 30 years, 40 years, maybe more, you're going to find each other. When I decide the time is right, I'm going to bring you back to each other, and you're going to reconnect. And then you're going to spend the rest of your life united as one, right? Fulfilling your life's mission together. What's hard? It's not hard for Hashem to arrange. It is hard, but Hashem easily, in his sleep, God arranges for souls, even though they're on two different sides of the world. One is religious, one is secular, one speaks one language, one speaks another language. God will organize it that you'll learn that language you need to learn. You'll find your way. You'll meet in Israel. You'll meet somewhere else on a trip. Hashem will make it for you to meet. That's not hard, because Hashem controls the whole world. Hashem could make that souls, even on different times of the world, will meet one another, that he'll bring those soulmates back together when that time is right. What is hard about making shidduchim? That when that time is right, Hashem brings those two souls together. What happens? Just like the ocean, when it looks at Am Yisrael and says, what happens? So when Hashem, let me go back a little bit. When Hashem showed us, we go back to when Hashem showed you the soul and said, will you split for this soul? We look at that beautiful, say, for that soul, that potential, that light, I'll split every single day for that soul. Because to marry another person, it means splitting myself. It means moving myself aside, sharing my entire life. My whole life is comfortable. I do it the way I want to do it. Now, when it comes to marrying another person, I put aside myself. I move aside my desires, all of my favorite things. If I like to travel, he does it. If I like to go out for meals, host people, whatever it is, all my things that I like to do, all my opinions on things, the way that I'm used to doing things, right? I'm a Slav. He's not. I have to now shift and crack myself open and make space for another person. And if we go back to just Kabbalah, before the condition for Hashem to make the world, the first thing Hashem did when he wants to make the world is tzimtzum. Move aside, literally create a gap, a space where he removes his shining light to make space for a world. Because there can't be a relationship with another unless I make space for them. That's a lot of work. Creating a tzimtzum in ourselves, creating a vacuum where we move ourselves aside to make space for another, to close our mouth and just listen without talking, without sharing our opinions, just to be there to hear another person without sharing our thoughts on how they should have done it better or should have done it differently. That's hard work. But when the soul, when we look at that soul of our other half, we say, yes, of course I'll split for that soul. That soul is perfect and beautiful. That soul has so much potential. Now, fast forward 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, we're sitting across that soul and we're meeting and we're like, you're not the soul. You're not my soulmate. My soulmate was perfect. You have, right? We look at all of we don't even get to so often. Hashem will put the two soulmates across each other, or they won't even get to see the soul because they're so distracted by the external. They'll only see the external and say, you don't make enough money, you don't have a good enough job, your family background is not strong enough for me, you don't dress well, you don't take care, right? I don't like your style of clothing, I don't like your opinions. We don't even get to look at the person's soul because we write them off right away without even seeing. You might be sitting across your soulmate and Hashem get two soulmates together, but they won't even give them a chance because of something external that they're not good enough for me. That's not the perfect soul that I said I'll split for. To get me to split for you, you have to be perfect. You have to match all 1,000 things on my checklist. I don't even get to look at your soul. And that's why making shidduchim is so hard. Because Hashem could get you together, but for you to actually agree to split for another person like the ocean, that's as hard as Kriyas Yamsuf. That takes you having to look deep into that soul, that person. And when I tell girls, I'm like, when you look at another person, just try and ignore everything else. Look in their eyes. Maybe your soul will know if you recognize that soul. Do you remember that soul? It doesn't mean that you're soulmates. Doesn't mean that you're two halves of one soul. But you'll remember. You'll have some sort of connection. If you feel that connection, maybe this is your soulmate. Look more. Maybe this is someone that can you self-actualize with this person? Can you two fulfill your life mission together? Can you complement each other? Can you push each other to grow, to be your best self? Is this somebody that makes me want to feel like I'm a better person? That's one of the best questions to ask. Now, this is not only for looking for soulmates. This is also for staying staying married. This is something that we need to do every single day. We need to be able to look past all of the things that trouble that annoy us about our spouse, and to look at their soul and say, this is the soul that I agreed to split for every single day. To remind ourselves every day is an avoda, to make space, to move ourselves aside, to make space for somebody who has totally different feelings and opinions and ideas and quirks than we do. To make space for that is an every single day avoda, to split ourselves for the others. That's what it requires to stay happily married, to stay in a healthy relationship. And it's a lot of work. When I taught this to my seminary girls, they said, I heard that it's harder to stay married than to get married. And I said, I was like, what, really? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. Like, you guys are so wise. Like, we don't know. You're the only one married. I'm like, yeah, I think you're right. Every single day, it's not just splitting yourself once to say, yes, I will split for you. It's actually doing the work and saying, I will continue to split for you every single day of my life. I will put myself aside and make room for you, even though you're different. Be open to your differences. Be open to all the ideas that you have that are so different than mine. That takes so much work. And that's the difficulty of shidduchim. And that's why sometimes Hashem has to arrange for sometimes people to meet. Sometimes Hashem makes your shidduch happen in front of somebody, and they have to meet over and over again. I know spouse, but only years later when they were ready to actually look at that person and say, maybe you were my soulmate all along. How many times has that happened? Because sometimes it takes us doing our work to be like, oh yeah, you were my soulmate from the beginning. I just couldn't see that because I was so distracted by what I thought was important in life. And if you've heard me before, you know that I used to be involved in shidduchim for 30 plus, and I quit because it's the worst job in the world, because not only did they not get married to each other, but in my mind, I would have these two people that I was very intuitive, and I knew that like they would be so happy together and they would have the happiest life. And in my mind, they were like perfect. We had babies and they were so happy. And then I would suggest it, and the boy or the girl would just say no to the other person. They wouldn't even agree to go out because of something so superficial, like their weight, age, family background, job, career, where they lived. And I'm like, you're basically passing up on your soulmate because of something. You don't even date them. So I was so frustrated and heartbroken from it. I was like, I'm never, ever, ever making a shidduch again. I will suggest things to other people to suggest. Like if I have ideas, I'll help people. I'll forward ideas. I'll try to think of you. But actually being the jadchan is devastating, because people, and I'm not blaming these people because we're all human and we go after what we see and we're visual people and but if we can learn from the ocean to look deeper into somebody and to look in their eyes really deeply and say, could you be my soulmate? Could you be somebody that we can make me want to be a better person? Can we grow together, right? Can I love you? Do I remember you? Is there any familiarity here? Then maybe we could have an easier, but shidduchim are just hard as crazy Yam Suf. It's hard. That's it. Okay, so I just want to give everyone a bracha to have only light in our lives, to have no darkness in our life, and if chas v'shalom we counter any darkness, to have the ability to find light inside of that, to be able to overcome any challenges in our lives, to be met with only surot tavot, and we know no more tsar. May Hashem comfort the families of all of those who were taken from us much too young, and may be returned to us very, very soon. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful.
Okay, Kiki, is the second one married yet?
Which one?